It is day 2 of the Sean Diddy Combs federal trial. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, she is one of Combs' many accusers, testifying as a central witness.
Is she ready?
Very ready and confident. Thank you.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend.
They referred to him as a kingmaker, a music mogul, and the hip-hop industry's biggest success story. But yesterday, when Cassie Ventura spoke in court, that meticulously constructed image fell apart in front of our own eyes. The guy who formerly ran an empire couldn't control his responses, as Cassie stated that his face turned pale as his ex-girlfriend described occurrences so upsetting that even the most seasoned courtroom reporters were left speechless. He characterized it as
brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. He said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on, to the lighting in the room, to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate what is a freak-off, the freak-off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21, she was young, she didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend. Combs has pleaded not guilty. His attorneys argue the video is evidence of jealousy, not sex trafficking. And now for the first time, jurors are hearing what Cassie has to say about that and other aspects of their
voyeurism, wanting to watch her having sleep with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was young. That is, she was 22. But we mean everything that supposedly occurred behind closed doors. The singer anticipated to confront the 2016 video of Combs assaulting her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend, but Combs has appealed not to, saying she didn't know any better and that she wanted to satisfy him, among other things. Nevertheless, his lawyers contend that the video shows envy rather than sleep trafficking, and for the first time, jurors are hearing Cassie's account of that and other elements of their decade-long connection with Sean Diddy. Because he essentially made bad boy records out of nothing, turned musicians into superstars, and established a brand that went beyond music to include fashion vodka, Combs moved through the music industry as if he owned everything. Diddy was the ideal success story, according to the media. The man who taught everyone how to transform hip-hop into Cassie's testimony begins, and Diddy's initial reactions. He made a lot of money in the company, but his flawless image and well-crafted persona of. If you believe what is currently being revealed in court, the business genius mentor and music visionary was concealing something much worse, as magazines featured him on covers for his business endeavors and audiences applauded his performances. Cassie Ventura was allegedly living a totally other reality, as everyone was witnessing his flawless red carpet smile. The contrast was startling to everyone in that courtroom yesterday. Here's a man who poses as the epitome of professionalism in public, with impeccable grooming, tailored suits, and always saying the correct thing in interviews. Yet the accusations portray a totally different, unrecognizable person behind closed doors. On day 2, Diddy entered looking precisely like the rich mogul we all know, surrounded by his team of expensive lawyers who nodded confidently, according to fans who only knew him from his public face court reporters. It didn't last long, according to several witnesses, because the man appeared to be going to a business meeting, rather than dealing with severe accusations from his ex-girlfriend. He even smiled sometimes to individuals in the courtroom. During the first half hour of Cassie's testimony, Diddy's entire manner altered. The swagger vanished, the confidence vanished, and the composed business face began to show cracks as Cassie described certain occurrences from. Diddy's legal staff routinely raised concerns during their relationship, seemingly in an attempt to silence her. Can you believe this? Diddy developed a billion-dollar corporation and dominated the careers of innumerable people. The power dynamic had radically changed when Cassie actually spoke, and witnesses in a courtroom described how Diddy, an artist who had negotiated huge
Time she actually had said that she looked forward to the freak-offs. Why did Cassie express looking forward to these said freak-offs?
When the prosecution asked her, was there ever a time that you enjoyed the freak-offs? This is when Cassie got choked up and she said, I did, but only because I got to spend one-on-one time with Combs, and I really did love him.
And that is speaking to the psychological abuse in addition to the physical abuse that she potentially experienced.
Yet, she's definitely laying out someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have this record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment led by Sean Combs, and basically describes being enamored by Sean Combs, loving him, not knowing about certain things sexually, and him sort of telling her, teaching her about that. And what you hear is someone that was young and she even said, you know, I was young, I was naive, I didn't know any better. But she's really telling the story of someone who thought she was going to be with someone in this music industry that was going to help her career, that cared about her, but quickly learned after the freak-offs that wasn't the case. And what I thought was also interesting is she said that after that first freak-off, she said she felt dirty. She didn't want to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freak-offs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled in the email because Combs responded by saying, I know, you don't want to do it. And she said, oh no, well, it's not that. But that was the beginning. That was in 2010, where she brings up in an email that she wanted to have a conversation about this. And in her words, she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had to do it.
Well, Diane, prosecutors have wasted no time getting right into the alleged abuse that Cassie Ventura says she endured for years. Ventura telling jurors, quote, he would bash my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head when I was down. She also got into the nature of those so-called freak-offs, saying that they involved hiring an escort, and they performed under the direction of Combs, saying that they happened so frequently it eventually became a job for her to set them up. Ventura said she did not feel she had much of a choice but to participate, that she feared that Combs would retaliate or potentially blackmail her if she did not. And she's had at times to take, she's taken deep breaths, pausing her testimony, Combs appearing to be listening pretty passively with his hands in his lap at the defense.
Commercial deals, was now unable to control his own feelings. When Diddy approached the stand, everyone in the courtroom couldn't take their eyes off him. His face was said to be colorless, as if someone had pulled a plug, and he began fiddling with his tie, cufflinks, and finally just his hands. One court reporter described it as observing him hurriedly jotting notes and delivering them to his lawyers. The notes came so quickly that one of his lawyers had to put up a hand to slow him down. For the first time in their lives, someone realized they were losing control of the story. Another witness reported that Diddy appeared physically ill, while Cassie calmly described their connection. A third witness also reported seeing Diddy. He repeatedly closed his eyes, as if he couldn't stand to hear Cassie's words or look at her. But this was only the beginning. As Cassie's evidence went on throughout the afternoon, the audience will soon learn exactly. The particular accusation she was going to make would rock the music industry and possibly ruin the legacy Diddy spent decades creating as the man who always had the upper hand. Why couldn't Diddy keep his cool? When Cassie Ventura entered the stand, you could hear a pin drop in the courtroom. Everyone knew that this moment was imminent, but nobody, not even Diddy's legal team, was really prepared. The tale was about to face a version he couldn't edit or make. After years of being silent and suppressing these experiences, Cassie finally had the opportunity to speak. She did it in a modest way, which is what made it so powerful. Cassie started by explaining how. When she was only 19, she met Diddy, who was already a well-known figure in the music business, a multimillionaire with contacts all over the world, and a young model wishing to pursue a career in music. The power gap between them was enormous. Cassie claims that Diddy knew exactly how to use that power from day one. Her story developed gradually, much like a horror film, when you know something terrible is about to happen but are unable to turn away. First, there were little control concerns that he apparently insisted on knowing her whereabouts at all times, showing up without warning if she was out with friends, and then king the career control, threatening to remove her music if she didn't follow his. In the most startling section of court records, Cassie detailed how Diddy reportedly put surveillance software on her phone and how he allegedly ruined collaborations with other artists if he felt threatened. She stated that he gradually cut her off from people who would have given her the notion to leave him one by one, even though he knew exactly where she was and would occasionally phone her minutes after she arrived. During this portion of the hearing, the judge reportedly had to call for order 3 times because Diddy was unable to contain himself and was shaking his head and whispering loudly to
Wide Open.
Cassie's relationship with Diddy. Some of those details we've seen in prior lawsuits, but to hear her on the stand actually giving those details, reliving those moments herself. Also, you have to remember, she's very pregnant right now. So I'm gonna be curious to see how long she makes it on the stand, how she's emotionally able to weather all of these questions. And what's going to be interesting to watch is, you know, the defense from the very start in their opening statement said that she chose to be there. So I'm going to be curious to see how she responds to questions about, was this her choice or did she feel like she had to do all of these things?
I think what made Cassie emotional is having to describe the details of the freak-off and why she did it. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Sean Combs, that's when she broke down. Up until that point, she had just been answering the questions. She's a little soft-spoken at times, but that's when she got emotional. When she had to answer the question about if she enjoyed it, that's when she broke down because she said, I enjoyed being with Sean Combs. And she says, I did it because it made him happy.
What does the expressions of the jurors look like?
The jurors are laser focused on what Cassie has to say. And that's to be expected, right? Because she is the person who will likely be on the stand, according to attorneys, for 2, maybe 3 days. She's the one that was in the relationship with Sean Combs for over 10 years. So she's got a lot to say, and she's just getting started.
Just how important is Cassie's testimony to the prosecution?
I think it really connects the dots, Rachel. When you look at that initial indictment and what's being alleged, she really is the person that has probably the most information about this idea that the prosecution says, which is creating a criminal enterprise for Sean Combs' sexual desires. Something else that the jurors saw today that sort of connects it back to this alleged criminal enterprise are 7 photos of people that were very close to Sean Combs, one even his former chief of staff. And these were all people that Cassie Ventura was able to name and explain the functions in terms of what they did: security, driver, chief of staff, someone that handled financials. So it's showing that she knew some of these people, again, because she was with him.
Every time the judge cautioned him, he would gather himself for 5 minutes before continuing, his lawyers making faces that the jury could see. It was like watching someone who has never been told no suddenly realize they can't control the situation. But then the moment that made all the difference came when Casey took out her phone and gave it to her lawyer, who displayed the emails and texts on a screen for the court to view. Diddy's expression was one of complete disbelief. He obviously had no idea that she had saved these messages for years, in which he purportedly apologized for his violent outbursts and threatened to ruin her career if she told anyone what she had said. Messages that directly contradicted assertions his public relations team had been making for years, but those were only introductory remarks. As Cassie went on with her testimony, she detailed physical assaults that reportedly occurred during their relationship. The audience fell hushed as she told how she was shoved down a flight of stairs by him, and how she was thrown against walls during arguments. Most distressing of all, she testified about many instances at a Miami rental home where he reportedly choked her until she almost passed out, only pausing when she went limp, causing several jurors to notice. Reacted to these accusations. Following some of the most violent descriptions, the most experienced reporters in the courtroom saw a male juror unable to keep eye contact with Diddy, while an older woman on the jury was observed wiping away tears. The hotel incident that would blast this case wide open was just getting started, and Cassie remarked, "I thought I was going to die that night," admitting that they were unprepared for the level of detail in her evidence. The courtroom leaned forward to listen to her every word as she described an incident at the Four Seasons Hotel that no one had ever heard about before, not even the fans, the press, or gossip blogs. Cassie described how she had kept this hotel encounter a secret for years out of concern for her career, her safety, and the fact that no one would believe her over someone as powerful as Diddy. However, she was now seated on. Cassie claimed that Diddy became upset after witnessing her conversing with another music producer, and that she wasn't hiding anything from him. What began as a typical business after-party turned into a nightmare. The most stunning thing, Cassie told the court, was how his smile vanished, how he held her arm so firmly that it left bruises, and how he screamed threats in her ear while keeping his public face in front of everyone at the event. She claimed that Diddy practically pulled her across the hotel lobby to the elevators while she was crying in a...
I think what the defense is going to say is that this wasn't blackmail, this was not coercion, this was consensual. We know that Cassie started out with Sean Combs as an early person, with someone who is trying to get her career started, and he was going to help her. That's what the defense is going to say, that she was starting out and wanted someone to support her. They did their first record deal together. That's something I think the defense is going to focus on, and had it not been for Sean Combs, she wouldn't be where she is right now. The prosecution obviously is saying he was in control. It may have started out as a consensual. It may have started out with her being excited about seeing him, but ultimately he took control of that relationship. He took control of her career. This is their key witness, and she's on that stand trying to explain all of the charges that the prosecution wants to hit home with that jury.
No, there was a moment early on when Cassie mentioned Dallas Austin, who she called a friend who's a producer. So I don't know if that's someone that we're going to hear from. We know that there were pictures shown to prospective jurors that are well-known celebrities, you know, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Lauren London. We don't know, though, how they fit yet into why they were even asked, do you know these people? Are you familiar with them?
So the prosecution is questioning Cassie right now, still questioning her.
The defense hasn't even got a chance to, I mean, that might change based on the timing, but, you know, because she's such a key witness, it's likely that she will be on that stand the rest of the day. We learned that Cassie referred to him as Pop Pop, and Sean Combs would refer to her as CC. The prosecution says, what does CC stand for? She said Cassie Combs.
What kind of witness is Cassie coming off as to the jurors?
I think naturally when you look at her visually, people see that she's pregnant and looking like she's due any day now. So they might, you know, have empathy, sympathy for her in that way, but we don't really know. We know that they've been instructed to be fair and impartial. As to what type of witness she's coming off as, she's describing someone that she was, someone she said that was trying to figure out who she was at that time and who she was allowed to be. Now you're looking at somebody that's almost 40 years old, totally different person, but even in describing what was going on at her at that time, taking drugs, trying to please Sean Combs, she's really just sort of laying out the case for her not having a lot of control. So I think that's the takeaway. This is someone who is making it very clear that at that particular time in her life, she says she did not have any control really over what she wore, what she did, who she was having sex with. She's a different person now. But I think when she talks about those details and even reflecting on them for herself, as we saw today, she broke down in that courtroom.
Attempting to leave, creating such a commotion that hotel security came over. But the guy retreated when he recognized Diddy. He simply asked if everything was all right. And when Mr. Combs replied that it was, he left without even asking me how I was feeling. Cassie then testified, and then the pictures arrived. Cassie's attorney showed a number of pictures she had photographed of herself the morning after the incident. It was unsteady and obviously taken in a bathroom mirror, which made it even more unsettling. The pictures showed bruises on her arms, a split lip, and redness around her neck. Cassie clarified that she took pictures out of fear that no one would believe her. Otherwise, Diddy's legal team sprang into action, doing everything they could to prevent the jury from seeing these images, claiming they weren't taken correctly. Confirmed that they might have come from anything that ought to have been shown during discovery. The judge rejected all of the objections, and when the pictures were shown on the courtroom screens, the jury's response revealed everything. 2 male jurors turned their heads aside, unable to even look at the pictures, and a female jury in the back row was spotted writing quickly in her notebook with her hand shaking. This hotel event occurred. Nobody anticipated the bombshell. It had not been mentioned in earlier papers or remarks, and his lawyer's terrified expression made it clear that none of his staff had prepared a rebuttal. Cassie stated that Diddy damaged the hotel room in a fit of rage, smashing a lamp, and that he hurled a champagne bottle at her head, missing her by inches and shattering against the wall. Everyone in the courtroom heard her account. Most unsettling of all, she said he took her phone, threatened to punish her if she attempted to contact for help, and kept her from leaving the room for more than 48 hours after flipping a table and punching a hole in the bathroom door. As this section of the testimony came to a conclusion, everyone in the courtroom looked at Diddy. His response would shape the trial as a whole and perhaps the remainder of his career. It was the moment that no one in the courtroom would. You must realize that the man who created an empire on his capacity to remain composed under pressure, Dottie, totally lost it in front of everyone. The facade broke and then crumbled, and what was underneath wasn't nice. This man has spent decades cultivating his public persona as a smooth-talking businessman, a cool-headed mogul, and someone who never shows signs of perspiration. However, when Cassie's testimony reached its most devastating point, points that had been meticulously guarded began to slide, and court reporters who have covered hundreds of celebrity cases claimed they had never witnessed anything like it. The self-assured business titan who walked in that morning to a guy who appeared terrified and besieged. As the afternoon went on, he appeared to practically shrink in his chair with every new accusation Cassie made, and I heard from his legal team that they were working overtime. Diddy's primary lawyer was seated directly behind them, and he kept putting his hand on Diddy's arm in an attempt to soothe him. At one point, one of the lawyers even handed him a note that purportedly read, "Remain composed in everything," capital letters, but it wasn't working. When Cassie recounted an event at his Hampton home, Diddy slapped his hand down on the table with such force that the sound reverberated across the courtroom. The judge abruptly halted the proceedings and threatened to remove him from the chamber, saying, "Mr. Combs, if you can't control yourself, I will have you removed from this courtroom." It appeared as though Diddy would be removed from his own trial during Cassie's testimony. During her testimony, witnesses observed him repeatedly shaking his head and mouthing the phrase, "That's not true." Something more harmful was that he seemed to have forgotten that a jury was observing every move he made. According to one courtroom witness, it appeared as though he had never been called out before abruptly recognizing he was out of control. According to the story, Diddy supposedly controlled every aspect of Cassie's life during their whole relationship. Now that she was speaking her truth, he was powerless to stop her or take away her microphone. The true turning point was when Cassie began discussing the threats she testified Diddy had supposedly made, but he was unable to have security remove her or spin it through his PR staff. He had to simply sit there and take it. Threatened her family if she ever discussed what had transpired between them, and then came the shocking revelation that no one had anticipated. Her lawyer produced recordings of his voice uttering these threats. Diddy lost it in court, jumping out of his chair and yelling at Cassie, "You know that's not how it happened." His legal team then physically grabbed him in an attempt to pull him away. As he attempted to talk over the courtroom recording, 3 of his attorneys had to hold him back in his seat. The judge then requested a recess, but the harm had already been done to everyone. As the jury, reporters, and court officials dragged Diddy out for recess, he appeared quite different, demonstrating to them how touchable the man who had built his reputation on being untouchable was. When everyone believed they had heard it all, the actual bombshell dropped. Cassie had proof that no one saw coming, not even the judge. The person who had entered that morning had removed the mask, and what was underneath wasn't pretty. Not the jury, and particularly not Diddy, who for years had been discreetly gathering evidence of what she said had occurred throughout their relationship. Text messages, emails, and pictures, all of which were kept in various locations where Diddy couldn't locate them. When Cassie said she received text messages from other celebrities who had personally seen Diddy's behavior, the courtroom fell silent. These weren't just any industry folks, however. These were some of Did's closest friends and business partners, according to court transcripts, who had been part of his inner circle for years and had witnessed things backstage at events and at private parties that the general public was unaware of. When Cassie introduced these celebrity witnesses, his legal team instantly sprang up, noisily objecting and demanding a sidebar. One individual sitting in the gallery characterized Danny's face as being physically ill. After examining the communications in private, they contended with the judge that they shouldn't be admitted as evidence because they were hearsay and weren't properly filed during discovery. Diddy put his head in his hands once he returned to the courtroom, overruled all objections, and declared the communications to be extremely pertinent to the case, enabling them to be admitted into evidence. A major rapper texted Cassie following a Grammy afterparty, saying, "You okay? What I saw tonight wasn't right. You can stay at my place if you need to." Cassie knew what was coming as one-by-one texts from well-known names displayed on the courtroom screens. The most damaging were texts from a longtime friend who wrote, "I've known him for 15 years, and I've never seen him act like that with anyone else. This isn't normal, please call me."